Does all of the Matthew Stafford to the New York Giants chatter that we've heard over the past few days make any sense? Is it reality? Could it actually happen? Let's talk about that on today's edition of the Valentine's Views podcast. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. All right, lots and lots of Matthew Stafford chatter around the inner Google, around social media these days, as the New York Giants get deeper and deeper into an offseason where they have to try to answer their quarterback question. All of that chatter, that speculation, that talk sort of came to a head on Thursday when Fox Sports radio host Colin Cowherd spoke about Stafford to the Giants and said that he had been told that the chatter is real, that there is a possibility that that Stafford could be a New York Giant. Cowherd said that he knows it sounds crazy, but he's been told that the Giants don't like the quarterback class, that they do like Matthew Stafford. He's been told that the Rams really don't want to restructure the 37-year-old Stafford's deal, and that they might be willing to move on from Matthew Stafford. Look, I am not sure. I don't have that information firsthand, but let's talk about this first and foremost from a Giants perspective. I get asked, I've had a few mailbag questions in the last few days regarding whether it makes sense to trade for Stafford, whether it makes sense to give up draft capital for Matthew Stafford. And look, when I wrote the rules for draft success, a few years ago, I always talked about accumulating draft capital. And this is not necessarily a draft question, but it comes back to accumulating draft capital and using that draft capital to acquire other assets when it makes sense. Now, for me, the way that I look at the Giants' circumstance, Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen on a short leash. Cowherd said they'll be fired by Thanksgiving if things don't go well, and that may be what happens. You don't know. We'll have to see what happens during the 2025 season, but it's obvious that both guys are under pressure. It's obvious they need to find a solution to the quarterback issue. They need to win more than 3 football games in 2025. They can't have another season where the Giants look like they're underwater, where they look like they don't know what they're doing, where they're a non-competitive football team in a lot of cases. The product has to be better. And the quarterback play has to be better. So for me, Matthew Stafford, a trade for Matthew Stafford, 37 years old, 16-year veteran, still a guy who's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, still a guy who throws it as well as anybody in the league. This makes a lot of sense for the New York Giants for a lot of reasons. It gives them instant credibility. It gives them locker room leadership that they were missing, and the players said they were missing in 2024. This is a guy that's been 16 years in the league, won a Super Bowl, as I said, looked at, as a potential Hall of Famer someday. But this is a guy well respected around the league, can still play at a very high level. Matthew Stafford would give the Giants a credible quarterback. He would answer that question for the next couple of years. The other part of that is, I don't know if the Giants like this draft class in terms of the quarterback situation. I know that most draft analysts don't. Most draft analysts say that if you're a quarterback needy team entering this draft class, you have a problem because there aren't guys that are guaranteed solutions. A lot of draft analysts think that Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders, the top two rated quarterbacks in this class, would be rated behind the top six quarterbacks in the 2024 class. That being Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix, and Bo Nix. So, not a great year to be needing a quarterback. No guaranteed, surefire answer in the draft. Not that there ever is, but most analysts are down on the idea that you're going to find your long-term answer in this draft class, unless perhaps you're fortunate enough to be able to draft Cam Ward out of Miami. So acquiring Matthew Stafford is not a long-term solution for the Giants, but it would be a short-term solution. It would give them the credibility, the leadership, as I talked about. It would also give Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, if they're able to improve the product enough to serve in 2025, to win some football games, to be credible, to be at least decent, it buys them time. And people will talk about Arch Manning, and maybe that is Arch Manning. I don't know, but it buys them time to maybe be able to survey the field, to look for a young quarterback of the future, to look for that long-term answer, perhaps in a quarterback class with more options, with better options, whether that's 2026, 2027, I don't know, but it buys this organization time to find its long-term answer. So I think Matthew Stafford to the New York Giants makes sense. What does not make sense for the New York Giants would be to give up that number 3 overall pick. Cowherd said that is what he heard that the Rams are asking for, that number 3 pick in the upcoming draft, plus maybe another day 2 asset, something along those lines. And look, that's exactly what the Rams should be doing. If the Giants are expressing interest in Matthew Stafford, the Rams should absolutely shoot for the moon. They should absolutely ask for that number 3 overall pick. There's no way the Giants should give it up. No way. Not for Matthew, not for a 37-year-old short-term answer. If you can get Matthew Stafford for some combination of 2025 and 2026 day 2 assets, maybe even, a couple of day 2 assets, a day 3 asset somewhere in there. Maybe you throw in a player somewhere in that deal. If you can do that, then you try to do that. But you can't give up the number 3 overall pick. You just can't. You can take that number 3 overall pick. If you were able to get Matthew Stafford, use that number 3 overall pick on Abdul Carter, the edge defender out of Penn State, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan, use that number 3 overall pick on Travis Hunter, dual position player. Take that number 3 overall pick and trade down a couple spots, get some additional assets, add some more depth in in some other places, add more talent to the roster. You can't, if you're Joe Schoen, give up that number 3 overall pick. For me, that would be a Hail Mary. That would be an effort on the part of Joe Schoen to save his job, to save Brian Daboll's job, to do something that only considers the short term and doesn't consider the long-term good of the franchise. That is something Joe Schoen has promised not to do. And giving up that number 3 overall pick, that's a bridge too far to make a Matthew Stafford deal happen. It's something that the Giants are going to have to, if they were to acquire Stafford, they'd have to give up, or they would have to renegotiate that contract. They'd have to pay him a big chunk of money for the next couple of years, maybe a 3-year deal with 2 years worth of guaranteed money, something along those lines. But so you're going to have to give up some draft assets. You're going to have to pay the man, but you just can't give up that number 3 overall pick. That's just too much. Now, The other part of this deal is I'm still not sure that the Rams would actually move Matthew Stafford. I think there's some discussion. I know Stafford and his wife aren't happy about all the chatter about the Rams trading, wanting to trade wide receiver Cooper Kupp. I know that maybe the Rams are leery of renegotiating Stafford's contract and giving him a lot of money, but the Rams were a playoff team in 2024. They were a good team. They were a double-digit win team. They're not that far from having an opportunity to get to a conference title game, from having an opportunity to get back to a Super Bowl while they still have a quarterback who is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback in Matthew Stafford. I'm not sure that the Rams actually have any intention of moving on from Matthew Stafford. We'll see. Maybe this is all negotiation. Maybe they're holding a little bit of that over Stafford's head as they consider, negotiating a new contract. I don't know, but I'm still not buying that trading Matthew Stafford at this point is in the best interests of the Los Angeles Rams, because they're a football team that's not rebuilding. They're not necessarily looking to the future. They're a team that is competitive and has that window of opportunity right now. So we'll see what happens there. But again, I will believe that the Rams will trade Matthew Stafford, that they'll move on from Matthew Stafford. I will believe that they will do that when they actually do it. The other part of this is Stafford, to my knowledge, does not have a no trade clause in his contract. So the Rams could send him anywhere they wanted to if they want to. But I can't imagine that they would treat Matthew Stafford in such a brusque manner that they wouldn't consult him on where he would like to go, on what he would like to do if they do decide to move on from him. This is a guy that won a Super Bowl for them, that's represented their organization, in a terrific manner. The guy who's been a class act for them. I don't see them just saying, we can send you to New York, or we can send you to Cleveland, or wherever, and we're just going to send you where we want to send you. I can't imagine that they wouldn't consult with Stafford, and that if they do send him someplace, that it wouldn't be a place that Matthew Stafford would approve first. And I'm not sure. I don't look at the Giants as a place where, where Stafford would be excited to come. 3-14 in 2024. Head coach and a GM on the hot seat. Might not be there in 2026. 9-25 the last 2 years. Wouldn't excite me if I was Matthew Stafford and I had options, especially, since I just played for a playoff team. I'm 37 years old. I've got a couple of year window left before my career is over. I want to maximize that. I want to get into the playoffs. I want to play for good football teams. I want to have a chance, whether it's an outside chance or whatever. I want to have an opportunity, to have a chance to get another ring. And I don't know that happens in New York with the Giants. So I don't know if it's in Matthew Stafford's best interests. Maybe the Giants are a team that I've heard people say they're a little bit closer than people might think. I mean, they do have Malik Neighbors. They do have some weapons on offense. Their offensive line, if Andrew Thomas stays healthy, their offensive line is somewhat better than people think it is. They do have some talent on the defensive side of the ball with Dexter Lawrence and Brian Burns, Bobby Okereke, Andrew Phillips, Tyler Nubin. As Joe Shane has said, the cupboard is not completely bare, but there is a lot of work to be done, before the Giants are a truly competitive football team. So maybe it's not as bare as people think it is, but I still don't see the Giants as a team that's ready-made to win, that Matthew Stafford would be excited about. Anyway, Giants fans, that's my take at this point on the Stafford situation. It makes sense for the Giants if the price doesn't include a number one pick. And it makes sense because of the leadership, because of the credibility, because of the talent, because of the fact that Brian Daboll and Joe Shane are on short leashes and they need an answer at the quarterback position now. They don't need a guy who can be an answer 3 years from now. So, I mean, they can worry about that a year or two down the road if they find Matthew Stafford. It's an interesting situation. It's obviously great fodder for a show like this. It's great fodder for Colin Cowherd. It's great fodder for anyone who creates content around the NFL offseason and around the New York Giants. And I'm sure we will be discussing it more as we get deeper and deeper into the offseason. But that, for now, that's how I see the situation. I don't think it's going to happen ultimately. If the price doesn't include a number one pick and it did happen, I would be happy about it. I think that the Giants would have a solution that could help them for a couple of years in a lot of different ways. So we'll see what happens, and we'll continue to break it down, continue to give you all of the news, analysis, and information that we can about the Giants as we go forward into the offseason. So as always, Giants fans, thank you for listening. Please stay safe out there. Take care of each other, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.